Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Here.
Counselor Hershey,
Yes.
Counselor Kaup,
Here.
Counselor Dem,
Absolutely.
Counselor Stepp,
Yes.
and Counselor Wuso.
Here.
We have a quorum. I'll start with you next, Counselor Stepp.
Is there any changes to the agenda or conflicts of interest?
I'm just still not clear what was it the Raptor thing just pulled
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pulled entirely.
entirely? It wasn't pulled.
Pulled off the agenda. No,
Thank
it
you.
was just like, they needed time.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any agenda changes or conflicts, additional agenda changes or conflicts of interest this evening?
I have one comment, and that is that I've gotten some feedback from folks at home that we need to be better about using our microphones and not mumbling to one another, comments, maybe, statements, jokes, things like that. We just need to be a
Then they
little
should
tidier.
come. They want to hear it.
We should just be a little tidier.
Not my problem. The mic should work better.
Citizens appearing before council. This is for items not on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If it's on the agenda, we will take comment. If I miss it for some reason, make sure you throw your hand up, but any public comment? Anybody online? I believe the city website is down, so we might not have a lot of online comments tonight.
We have no internet. Yeah, that's how because we tried to refresh.
I guess not. But we are broadcasting this on YouTube, so
How do I get this? We have no idea.
can you, I don't know.
Yeah, that might be popping in and out.
I think it's the city website is what they said was not necessarily working well. Okay, seeing no citizens appearing before council for public comments, I'll look for a motion for a consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Been moved by Counselor Copp, second by Counselor Dame. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, first action item or presentation. This is ballot initiative 2C, next steps.
Can't remember who was doing that.
Sorry. So as you know, unofficial results are back, and 2C passed. Those will become official tomorrow. Obviously, there's a lot of desire to keep moving forward. And so we'd really like to schedule a work. So there's a couple of things that we need to do. You guys have, in the ordinance, you have a board to work on that. We talked about a couple of different ways to formulate that. I think we need to get that nailed down, get people on that, get moving. I know that December 1 is going to be busy. But I feel like we need to at least spend half an hour or 40 minutes, 45 minutes working on this issue then. And so really, that was the gist of the update was just that, is that I'd like to get a work session scheduled with you guys on the 1st. I don't know if morning or afternoon, we're still going to be playing with times as far as what works best. In terms of, we've got the city manager stuff going on, when to schedule that. And I don't want you guys totally wiped out. And we have the pay-as-you-throw work session scheduled as well.
At least from my behalf, I'd love to see that move forward and show the community that we are moving forward with the urgency that we told the community that this deserves. So if folks are okay with doing it, I don't care if it's morning or afternoon. Is there anybody that knows right now that the morning would be very difficult for them to attend on the 1st?
Me going longer on the 1st?
Yeah, potentially going longer or shifting some things that day.
Would you rather go would you rather go longer in the morning by an hour? Or would you rather potentially, I don't know that we'll need to, but potentially start a half hour earlier? So instead of starting at 4 o'clock, we start like 3:15, 3:30. Makes for a longer night, but then we're able to preserve that 2-hour session. It's up to you guys. I don't have any. Yes, sir.
Since we're here anyway.
Can you push your?
Since we're here anyway in the morning, I'd say we just extend it till lunchtime and just add it right then in the morning. By me.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. We'll do it in the morning on the 1st. Thank you very much.
Can that be contingent upon because I think we do want to invite folks with.
Yeah,
from
and that's
housing.
why I kind of, so this does actually give us a time frame for them. So I'll talk to them if something else, if something changes that they, for some reason that doesn't work for most of the group. I'll let you guys know, but I do think their input is going to be nice to have.
Well, you could just flop something from the evening over to the morning.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter. I'm seeing it doesn't really matter to a whole lot of folks.
When you say the group, you're saying the ad hoc housing commission?
Yeah, I just think some of those folks that had worked on, and been very
Mhm.
vocal, I guess it would be kind of the ad hoc group.
So I
Uh,
think we possibly could extend the invite to maybe 3 to 5 of the kind of the appropriated appointed leaders. We don't need the entire commission.
Right, yeah,
there.
yeah, no, that's
Okay.
what I meant. It's
Okay.
like, there's folks that were kind of leaders
Mhm.
in that group at the ad hoc level as well as it moved forward.
Great.
Those 5 or 6 people, it'd be nice to have them here,
Perfect.
not necessarily even to interact as much, but to watch and make sure you guys were doing what they were hoping.
Perfect.
Charlie, then Shelley.
Yeah, I wanted to, I asked, to make sure it's on the agenda tonight, because I think we need to make public pronouncement. We're going to move forward quickly, as Jonathan mentioned, but I think also I want to thank the people in the committee and that were out there walking the streets and doing everything else to get this passed. I really appreciate the efforts that were made by the community to get a very needed passage of it, of something that we need, which is to fund affordable housing. So I want to thank them all for all their time and effort.
All right,
I will second and agree with that, but also maybe this will give them time before December 1st so that, I don't know, they want to meet again together as a group and then bring us, just some fine-tuned recommendations for.
yeah, I think that from your standpoint, the biggest thing you're going to need to do is kind of figure out how you want to put together I can't remember what we called it, workforce housing. Yeah,
Commission.
whether that's an arm of the current housing commission, whether that's something a little different, whether you need to add some positions to hit some other notes that aren't traditionally part of the housing commission, like lenders and financing. And so those are the conversations that I see us having as one of the critical first steps.
Yeah, but I think if they have recommendations on who
Right.
to be on
Yeah.
that board, maybe people that want to move up from the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
Well,
Sounds good.
And I'll say it's going to ultimately be on us to appoint this board of
Mhm.
commission. So while I would be interested to hear their recommendations, I mean, I think that ultimately resides in our under our authority. I would also say, Carl, at least it's a public meeting, so anybody can come. So I'd say
Absolutely.
invite the current existing housing commission, the ad hoc commission, whoever, is that group. They can designate amongst themselves because we'll probably ask them to come and have a couple of representatives sit at the table with us. Just be clear that if like 15 of them show up, that maybe only 2 or 3
Mhm.
get to represent them.
Mhm.
Makes sense. I
But
can
I'd
do
love to
that.
have as many people that worked on it as possible there, because I think that energy and that participation that they had on the grassroots, we want to honor here as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right. I appreciate that.
Anything else? All right. Congratulations to that group and the community. Number 8, memorandum of understanding for Habitat for Humanity agreement.
Good evening, council and mayor. Hannah Klausman, acting community development director. Just pull this up here for a second. Okay, so Habitat for Humanity memorandums and agreements. This was before you a couple weeks back, and we went back with Habitat and staff and made the changes that we approved, which were the 4 action items that we had the last time on area median income limits, employment and residency requirements, priority units for the city and other businesses, and also a waiver of system improvement fees. So just a reminder of what those 4 items were. You have the memorandums as edited in your packet. I understand there are some questions for clarification, and I did chat with Carl on one of them that was brought up regarding the waiver of system improvement fees. So clarification on that, it's a waiver of the system improvement fees or possibly reimbursement to Habitat for system improvement fees as part of a grant proposal that we have currently. So the priority units would be granted to the city of Glenwood Springs in either of those scenarios.
And to that point, as you're looking at the agreement, and sorry, I'm looking at my email, which of course renumbered this. I believe it is paragraph 4, fee waivers, city priorities. Second line, go all the way across until to the end of that sentence, and then it says in exchange. And would like to add for final approval to add to that sentence. So it reads, in exchange for obtaining the grant or waiving development fees, comma. Just to clarify that in either event, the city gets those priority units.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure, it is in exchange for obtaining the grant or waiving development fees, comma, and then the rest reads.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the questions were on that item, which staff had discussed with Habitat for Humanity, and they were okay with that provision. It just wasn't specifically stated. So excellent catch. And then I believe there are some questions possibly regarding residency and employment criteria as listed. So currently a staff put forward before criteria for home ownership on this one will have a priority for people that work in the city of Glenwood Springs, followed by second priority that work in the 81601 zip code. No timeline attached to that as presented. And then what council did add was a residency requirement, which Habitat usually puts into their agreements of living for at least a year in their service area. And council, I believe, directed a 2-year increase in that. So a 2-year requirement of living in the residency area. So no timeline for employment, just a geographic placement, and then a timeline for residency in the area to meet the homeowner criteria. So I'll throw that out and see if we have any questions about that one specifically.
Doesn't appear so. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm just putting this through my head again. No timeline for work in 81601. So you could work here for a month and be eligible.
That's what that means. Yes.
Okay. And can we put a timeline on it?
You certainly could, yes. And with discussions with Habitat, they would be okay with that. And Carolyn Meadowcroft is here in the room if we have questions for Habitat, but we also discussed that a little bit earlier, and they would be okay if council did decide to go with a provision adding a timeline for employment. I think it would be beneficial if you are interested in that to kind of state how you think that would support the program, just so, you know, kind of working these things all out through your head. Sometimes you're like, how would that actually benefit or negatively impact?
Well, it helps
Right,
staff
and-
as well.
And even
it
as
also
I
helps
said it,
staff.
I'm thinking, okay, somebody's moving to the area because they have a job at
Mhm.
Valley View. Would be nice if they could. So I understand, but thank you. I'd like the clarity.
Any other questions on that? I see Ingrid's mic is on. Did you? Okay, that's okay. I'm kind of using it as a default hand sign because we still don't have a hand thing.
But Hannah, just to verify, we do still have the, let's say if someone took a new job in Glenwood, we do still have a residency requirement. They have to have lived here for 2 years. So they are kind of grounded in the community.
Right, the residency though is the broader area. It's Habitat's service area, not Glenwood specific, which was what was agreed upon the last time as well. So if that's
Okay.
something you want to review.
So that's the one from Basalt to Rifle?
Mhm.
Is that the
Yes,
rest?
getting ahead, not
Oh,
Carol.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
I think there was one last item that I'll bring up that is in the deed restriction document that stipulates if a person is to move out of the service area, I believe it's service area. So that is the Rifle to Basalt area. They're no longer seen to be this as their primary habitation here, and then that would trigger them to sell the home. I think there was a question on that. So we didn't tie it to employment. But if you move out of the larger area, let's say, for example, you took a job in Grand Junction, and this is a standard component of Habitat deed restrictions. it's indicative that, Glenwood is no longer your primary residence perhaps. And so in that case, that would trigger a sale of the home. And that's to prevent possibly, and Carolyn can speak to this as well if you have questions of Habitat, but if you took a job, I don't know, in Wyoming, but held a deed restricted home here, you're working up there, you might want to think about if that's really the type of scenario that you want to serve, but that's what that's getting at.
So I may be the one to raise this question. Paragraph 11, the deed restriction. It says in the event, excuse me, the owner changes domicile or ceases to utilize his unit as his sole exclusive place of residence, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes, owner shall be deemed to have changed owner's domicile by becoming a residence elsewhere or accepting permanent employee outside the Roaring Fork Valley. I thought, Carol, maybe it's a question for you, but I thought that you Habitat particularly said if they work somewhere else, as long as they're still living here, we didn't want to do that because that doesn't give the permanency. So I was perplexed by that because I thought if they live in, for instance, they work in Aspen instead of in Basalt, so they're moved out of the area, they have to sell their residence. And I didn't think that's what we were talking about. I thought we wanted them to stay there as long as they were living there. I mean, if they actually moved somewhere else, that'd be different.
Are you thinking of a work from home scenario?
No, I mean, you could have
Remote
someone that
work.
gets in this unit that works in Carbondale, which is in the service area, but they live here. Because they moved to Carbondale, but let's say they get a job instead in Aspen, but they're still living in Glenwood. The way it's structured, they'd have to sell their unit. I didn't think that's what we agreed to.
I'm going to jump in here too and say, and what we're referencing is section C. And section C limits the geographical area up to Basalt on the south end and Rifle on the west end.
That's
And
the service
we
area.
never agreed to that. I don't think we put limitations on it as long as this was still their primary residence. So
I
it's,
thought we,
Ingrid, can I
I
get
thought we did.
clarification on which document you are in C? I thought we were talking about paragraph 11 of the
Yeah,
deed restriction.
That's what
Sale
Charlotte had brought up.
units 6C in the MOU. The page numbers aren't numbered, but page 4 of the MOU.
Is it the same as 11, Carl?
No.
So C, the one that starts with employment, Carl, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it reads employment, buyers must be employed at the time of purchase on a full-time basis, as that term is defined in the city's regulation, within the Glenwood Springs city limits or within 81601 zip code with priority for those employed in Glenwood Springs. After acquisition, each owner must continue to be employed on a full-time basis within the Roaring Fork Valley from and including Glenwood Springs to and including Basalt or the Colorado River Valley from Glenwood Springs to and including Rifle. So that is the same stipulation that's in 11 of the deed restriction.
Right, and I just, so you guys know, I was kind of focusing on the MOU because that'll flow through to the deed restriction would need to match up.
okay.
And I thought of the deed restriction first, because I read that first. So
Go ahead.
Pam, I'm kind of surprised that we will allow residency in the whole area, but then when we get to actually owning a house, they're more confined on their working location. And this is really a
Which is
council
fine.
thing.
That should be the same.
Purchasing the house versus if they
Right,
change
so-
Well, it
jobs.
says
Yeah,
in-
so
from
they
to
can
and
purchase,
including
if-
Basalt, not Aspen.
right, so Basalt actually extends it out as well as Carbondale. So for initial purchase, has to be either city limits, first tier, 81601, second tier.
Not residency working.
No, that's what I mean. It's employment must be, I'm
Okay.
sorry, employment,
Okay.
Glenwood or 81601 for initial purchase. Then that area of employment expands to Basalt to Rifle after acquisition. So it is broader after home ownership than it is for initial ownership.
so I'm going to jump in really quickly and say, big picture, this is kind of in between where some of us were saying we should not put geographical limitations and where you guys, a few of you were saying Glenwood only. So we're, in effect, we're not supplying Aspen with any employees or Battlement Mesa, but we do have the likelihood that someone could change jobs within a broader range than just Glenwood Springs.
Right.
How is everyone with that?
So are you saying we should agree to how it's written?
Well,
I
Can we
think
go, we're-
that's-
hold on, real quick.
Because-
We're just, right now, we're just asking, before we get into conversation about this, we're asking staff questions for clarification. I think there's some people in the audience maybe who want to speak to this, and then we'll bring it back for our conversation, just to keep us on track. But so are there, sorry to interrupt, but are there, before we get consensus up here, what we're gonna do, are there other questions for staff?
I have.
Yeah.
One other question. Now I have to go back and find it.
While you're looking.
Paragraph 5 in the MOU about other employment priorities. So if you work with other employers to be able to help fund and purchase units for their employees, that I had thought I know we had a discussion about restricting that possibly to just within the city versus the 81601. So that one I had a question on is council okay with this? Because right now it looks like any employer in the 81601 can partner on this project
Yeah,
and purchase.
If I can, as I recall the council discussion, it was really the thought that there's a fair amount of West Glenwood that is not within the city limits, but is in fact really connected to the town,
Okay,
to the city. Same thing if you think about going down, Midland and the employers that are out at the end of Midland that are definitely, really feel like they're part of the city, but are actually in the county.
right.
Some of the businesses around probably, Buffalo Valley, similar things. So I think that, when you're thinking about that, I tend to think of particularly Midland and West Glenwood as inside the corporate boundaries, and they are not. So that's
I do also, in that area I'm fine with. I think it's going like all the way down to, say, Thunder River, opening up a much larger area to where, the city is putting up the property to work with employers within Glenwood Springs. So
So what
I would like to see that tightened up a little bit, but I'm not sure how to do it.
would,
How do you do
would urban growth boundary or would, is there
I
another?
actually was going to suggest we could use the blue line, what we call the blue line, which is our water service.
Right?
Area.
6,000 feet, I think.
Well, and we're serving, which would be sort of Buffalo Valley, down on Midland where we were talking about, and then within West Glenwood. That's all inside of what we used to always refer to as our blue line for water service. That would be one way to define it.
So that would.
Okay,
just
that might be,
Then that would not include anything at the CMC exit like Gould or those
No.
business opportunities. It wouldn't include Holy Cross, or does it include Holy Cross?
I can't remember.
I bet we serve Holy Cross water.
Yeah. It's the end of the line is right there.
Yeah.
right.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I have one. Where did we come up? Not that it's a dramatic thing, but the 3% appreciation.
That's a standard provision in Habitat and actually other deed restrictions as well, 3% or consumer price index. I don't know if Carolyn wants to elaborate on the 3%, where that comes from.
And it's fine. I think 3% is pretty standard. But the consumer price index, does that also? I guess what, and I'll say as a preference, and then you can react to that as a question, but does it even include if there's a period of 4 or 5 years where there's no appreciation? Is it the greater of 3% or consumer price index, or 3% or whatever consumer price index is? The greater of?
I think it's worded the lesser of,
Yeah.
if I remember
Okay.
reading
I'm
it.
gonna pull up Carolyn, because
I
there's
don't-
different
I-
ways to approach this.
Thanks.
Yes, the cap on the appreciation would be 3% or CPI, whichever is least.
Okay,
So right now, CPI is considerably higher. And historically, it typically has been, but there have been occasions when CPI did fall below 3%. So whichever is the lower is
Okay.
what we would go by.
Okay.
And that is standard with APSHA, Garfield County Housing Authority, normal.
I couldn't recall, so that's why I asked the question. Thanks. Any other questions, Charlie?
Carolyn, would you mind responding to what I asked? I thought the Habitat is the one that said we shouldn't make people move out if they still lived here, but they worked out of the area. Did I misunderstand that?
So we have always had the requirement that if they are not working within our service area, which is Parachute to Aspen, they go to Grand Junction to work, they do have to sell the home back to Habitat. That's always been our standard. We had felt that the city council wanted to pull back and have a little bit tighter reins on where people work, as opposed to providing housing for people who may be working in Aspen. So we did pull that back to limit it to Basalt to Rifle.
Okay, thanks.
But normally our service area does include Aspen.
Anybody else? See a couple lights. Okay. Thanks. Anybody from the public like to comment? See a lot of people. Mr. Gould.
Mark Gould, 200 Oak Lane, Glenwood Springs. So I have to apologize that I wasn't at the last meeting when you guys were talking about this, but I got two issues. One is it's not clear what this decision will have to do with 123 out of the state and where we are in affordable housing and how we get funding. I think we need to take a deep breath, a 2-week breath. Let Carl figure out whether we need to restructure the deal so that, because there's state funding, but you have to do a certain amount each year of work to get that funding. And I'm not clear whether this affects that. And so I think that you should just sort of go, this just happened in light of what just happened in the election with 2C and with 123, you should take a 2-week deep breath. Now, having said that, let me just tell you that no way in Glenwood Springs should give away land to other people that they're not going to work forever in the Glenwood Springs area. That's just my opinion. So I know that it sounds terrible that somebody can actually live here in Glenwood Springs and then get paid $10,000 more in Basalt, because that's what's happening, and move to and take their Glenwood Springs piece of property that you're going to give away to Habitat. And I love that. I'm just giving you my passionate deal because I wasn't here last time. Do not take Glenwood property and do anything other than make sure it's a Glenwood Springs workforce housing forever, not for 1 year, not for 2 years. And I know that I got told, if you don't like the decision, move to Glenwood Springs and be on council. I'm sorry, I thought that was that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen, okay? I apologize, that's not gonna happen. So, but fundamentally, just think about it. Think about you're taking property owned by Glenwood Springs. Shouldn't it be for the benefit of Glenwood Springs forever? Thank you very much.
Mr. Gould, just real quick before I let you go, if what you're saying, and we usually don't go back and forth, but if what you're saying is keep it for Glenwood Springs, that doesn't apply to you, right? I mean, you're okay with that?
I am not in Glenwood Springs. I am working hard for the workforce housing of Glenwood Springs. And I know it seems strange because it will not affect my business. I'm just telling you what is right for Glenwood Springs, and I'm volunteering my time because I care. I want Glenwood Springs to be this awesome place forever. I've lived here a long time. You heard it in my editorial, right? Since 1977. This is an awesome place. This is not about Gould Construction. This is about Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Councilor Hershey.
Mr. Mayor, in light of the passage of 123, the state constitutional amendment and 2C, I would move to continue this matter to December 1st. Is that our next meeting? And add to the agenda on that date.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ingrid.
And then since it's open to comments, may I comment on one thing? And that is that I would also, we have at our, to our service, we have sustainable strategies, which is a lobbying firm that we have a contract with. I would love the opportunity to have them join us for a work session and educate us on how these pieces work together, what grant funding is available, and where do we go as a community from here?
Yeah,
Carl, can we
I
invite
will
them
tell
to-
you the mad scramble right now, just in general with 123 and whatever it was, I can't, I mean, it's
It's just-
123 and then.
Mhm.
there was-
120.
Thank you. Is that now that they've passed, now the state has to figure out how to administer it.
Okay.
So I'll have the best information I can, but I know that, there's, I'm not sure. Hopefully one of the questions we'll be able to answer is when is that funding going to be available?
So I think Ingrid's.
If I may.
Thank you.
I think to your point, real quick, I want to wrap that up is can we make sure we invite representatives from Sustainable Strategies to that meeting on December 1st? Yes, sorry. Yes, you may. I like your hair.
Thank you.
Okay.
You just want Deborah to come back, right?
Deborah who?
So I just wanted to point out, staff is currently working with a consultant on one of our housing grants that we have through DOLA.
Okay.
They just gave us a breakdown of Proposition 123 and what it means for municipalities and also some of the hoops that municipalities will have to jump through. Not going to say that my jaw hit the floor, but maybe a little bit. So I think it would be good for you guys to know the inner workings of that. Because there are some stipulations of how a municipality qualifies for the funding, which could be interesting. But I think that would be great. And we have a memo coming from that consultant that outlines Proposition 123 and some of that. So perhaps we could supply that as well in the meantime.
And then may I ask one more question while my light is on?
Yes, we should reserve it to the motion that's on the table, which is continuance. So like.
Well, yeah, but don't we usually get to have a discussion after there's motion a second?
On the motion.
Oh, on the motion. Okay.
So the motion is to continue it. And I think whatever you're going to say, whatever Charlie's going to say is going to be great. But we're going to talk about it in 2 weeks. I think if this motion passes, if that's okay.
Mhm.
Charlie?
Okay.
Ryan, let's call the question.
Yes, Counselor Hershey, no prayer, Mayor Pro Tem Willman, yes, Counselor Kalp, yes, Mayor Godus, yes, Counselor Dem, yes, Counselor Stepp, yes, Counselor Russo. It passes 6-1.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Mr. Gold, for everything.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, Mark.
All right, item number 9. This is ordinance 2022-25, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, fixing and certifying the mill levy on the 2020 assessment for collection in the fiscal year 2023 for the Glenwood Springs General Improvement District number 1980 and providing a temporary tax credit. First reading.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is just a yearly housekeeping issue that we have to do to certify our mill levy to the county. So that's what this is for the GID. Just certifying what we are going to send to the county for the property taxes that we will collect.
Are there any questions? Sure.
Did we budget this money? I know we originally had it in some budget, but then we pulled it back out. I can't remember I was trying to remember what happened with that. We're going to use this money for some purpose and I objected to that and.
Yeah,
so-
we pulled it back out of, we did not use it for the GID. We pulled it back out. That was for parking study or I can't remember.
Yeah, I
exactly
can't
what.
remember. I think it's just held right now and you guys can decide what to do with it.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect this, but I just questioned when I read this.
Right.
Okay.
Steve can explain what he's doing with it.
He can?
We had it in the budget for the CMC Welcome Center, but
that
you're
was-
right, we pulled it out from that.
Thanks, Carl.
Wait,
Thanks.
we need open public comment. Any other questions? See now we'll open up to public comment. It's an ordinance. See now we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back for action. Go ahead.
I'd make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-25.
Second.
Been motioned by Counselor Hershey, seconded by Counselor Dame. Brian, let's call the question.
Do I have to say yes if I make that?
You don't, no.
It passes 7-0.
Not to discern your inner workings, Counselor Shi.
Objection. That's actually a good objection. Like, well, so what was your wife think? You can't testify to what you.
That's right.
I mean, I can't.
Number 10, ordinance 2022-26, certifying mill levy in the 2022 assessment for collection of fiscal year. Did I just do this?
No.
Okay, the next one.
25 is the last.
Is there any questions? Well, what is this?
This is on the general. So the first one was the GID.
Yeah.
This is our normal general operating that basically feeds to the fire department.
Any questions? Anybody from the public like to comment on this item? Seeing none from you very sober gentlemen, I'll bring it back now for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
On ordinance 2022-26, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, fixing and certifying the mill levy on the 2022 assessment for collection in fiscal year 2023 and providing a temporary tax credit. I will make a motion to approve.
A second.
Motion by Councilor Russo, seconded by Councilor Pop. Brian's called the question.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Yvette.
We also feel similar, Brianna. Historical Museum budget and funding request.
It's not funny. They're not laughing.
Sorry.
Hello, my name is Nick Daly. On behalf of the Glenwood Springs Historical Society, as a member of and speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors, we would like to thank you for your funding involvement in the Cardiff Coke Ovens project and your commitment to seeing it completed. Before I begin, however, please allow me to adjust the amount of money we are requesting, which is incorrectly indicated on page 150 of tonight's packet. We are asking for $120,000, not the $160,000 as shown. This mountain river valley with its hot springs and caves, its indigenous history as the homeland of the Utes, its settlement, its outlaws, characters, presidents, and Hollywood stars have all contributed to the rich history of Glenwood Springs. Those who came before us have shaped this place. The history of the place and its people have made it the desirable destination it's become and the place we call home. Imagine what it would be like if all that makes Glenwood Springs so rich in history were removed from this town. Landmarks such as the Hotel Colorado, the Cardiff Coke Ovens, the Vapor Caves, Glenwood Springs Hot Springs, the Iron Mountain Hot Springs, Hotel Denver, and the Shoemate House, which is the home of the Frontier Museum. If they were all removed, this town would be a place only people go through to get to somewhere else. One way for this to occur would be to remove us, the keeper of our city's history, family genealogy, photo archives, children's history education, and so much more. All would be gone if we are not funded at the appropriate level of $120,000, which is the minimum amount necessary to enable us to continue operations. Think about it. Without us, there would be no more Doc Holiday collection, no more Ghost Walk, no work done on the Cardiff Coke Ovens, no more capstone projects for high school seniors. It would all simply cease to exist. We require your funding to continue our role as the keepers and ambassadors of Glenwood's history. Please be aware, we are not talking about excess. We're talking about keeping the lights on. Without this critical funding, the Glenwood Historical Society will be faced with some difficult decisions. Without this funding, when our money runs out at the end of this year, we may have to auction off the furniture, the historic photos and artifacts, or even close the city's museum and sell the house that currently houses it and distribute all the funds to our members who have backed our efforts. Insufficient funding is a realistic and immediate threat to our continued existence. You may ask, however, what we are doing to sustain our organization. One aspect of how we seek funding is by aggressively pursuing grants. Pages 147 and 148 in the handout illustrate the hard work we have put into obtaining grants since 2016. But keep in mind that for the most part, these grants fund projects, not salaries or expenses. We require your assistance to defray the cost of operating and maintaining the Historical Society as implied in the original A&I tax ordinance. Operational costs include the salaries of our staff, who are the lifeblood of our organization. For example, our director, Bill Kite, earned his degree in anthropology and archaeology and has a career's worth of experience as a historian, curator, archivist, and community leader. He is an extraordinary asset to our organization. In the 2023 budget submitted to you last month, we are proposing to increase his salary to $65,000, but without benefits, so that we can continue to retain his expertise and leadership. By comparison, the executive director of the Aspen Historical Society has a compensation package of over $118,000. Tourism is the #1 industry in Glenwood Springs, and the history of this city forms the foundation for its continuing success as a tourist destination. The current city budget, which exceeds $107 million, is evidence of the robust tourist economy that our entire city benefits from. Our request represents only about 0.1% of your proposed 2023 budget. Glenwood is enjoying this success largely on the back of history, the history we have up to now preserved at 1001 Colorado Avenue. If you go back to 1991, Ordinance 27 of the A&I tax spells out the intent on how to fund the museum, and I quote, "to defray the costs of operating and maintaining the Frontier Historical Museum. The total mandatory expenditure for museum operations pursuant to this paragraph shall be the lesser of 2% of annual income in the fund or $35,000 per annum. Subject, however, to supplemental appropriations at the discretion of the city council." You will find that the first part of that ordinance was applied to our funding today. We would be receiving exactly what we're requesting. 2% of the 2021 $6 million A&I tax collected is equal to $120,000. Past city councils, however, have chosen to fund the society at an amount not equal to the lesser than 2% of annual income. This funding has proved to be insufficient. As city council, however, you have the discretionary mechanism in the ordinance to provide supplemental appropriations necessary to fund the Glenwood Springs Historical Society at a sustainable level. We hope that your decision tonight reflects your ability and desire to fund us in the amount we are requesting, which will give us the opportunity to continue to be the stewards of Glenwood Springs history. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
I have a question.
Hi, Paul.
I'm just curious from what you had just mentioned, how many members do you have and how many of those members are local?
I'm going to refer to our executive.
That's great. Thank you.
Membership is about 124 people, but we service with the brochures that we have that we pass out with the services we provide. We serve probably 6,000 to 10,000 people a year.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, I'm looking at the budget that you say back in September for 2022. Do we have a 2023 budget?
I sent that to you on 9/14/2022.
I have the 2022 budget.
I sent that to you on 9/15/2022.
Right. I thought I had it, I can't find it. So the increase is primarily salary, is that my understanding? I apologize, I
Not
can't-
necessarily. It depends. If you look at the other, for instance, the 2023 budget, operating budget. If you look at, it said $9,000 is what we estimated, but it turns out we're going to have $40,000 in grant money come to us. If you figure that and the $47,800 funding we get from other sources, which are listed on here, doc holiday collection, archival income, admissions to the museum, membership dues, a gift shop, special events, photo sales, tours, and that sort of thing. That totals $87,800 of funding that we provide. Okay. So that would more than cover salary. I mean, it's a general fund. It doesn't have to go to salary. It goes to other things, keeping the lights on. So we bring in enough money from other outside sources to fund the position.
I'd like to add something at this point. We have had a historical assessment of the building, the museum building itself, which is in dire need of repair. I'm a retired architect, so first thing I did when I looked around the building, I saw some of these things, and not surprisingly, the assessment agreed with my opinion. We need a new roof. There is structural damage in the foundation that is causing severe cracks in the building. We need a new sewer line. So there are major maintenance items that need to be done. So yeah, the money will be well spent.
Looks like Shelley then Ingrid.
Okay. Hi, Bill.
Hi.
I had a quick question too. You said you sent the budget out, but I do not have a
me either.
2023 budget, or I may have had a 2022 budget. I can't remember from a year ago, but that would have been helpful with this submittal. So just having a detailed budget of how the money will be spent. I think
Certainly, I
would be
agree.
really
That's
helpful.
why I sent those to Charlie for your working session back in when, I think it was in August, or no, it was in September.
September, I have the 22 you sent me. I can't find the 23. And I don't know why I can't, because I'm doing searching my email right now.
So I
Okay.
did my homework because I thought we were going to be having a session in October. And so then when I heard it was a working session, I didn't prepare a PowerPoint or anything like that, or have handouts that I'd already sent to you.
Okay, okay. But if we could get a copy of the budget, I think that would help a lot with this decision, because I don't have a copy of it.
Okay.
I don't know if the rest of council does.
I
but
didn't have.
Yes, Ingrid.
My question is for a legal interpretation from Carl of the statement on the ANI.
Sure. They're referencing the original ANI question, which of course was reauthorized with new language. And that language is codified in the municipal code. And it says the current language as approved is to defray the costs of operating and maintaining the Frontier Historical Museum, and at a minimum to help pay and or defray the executive director's salary, subject, however, to annual appropriations at the discretion of the city council.
Okay.
And the reason I mentioned that earlier language in that ordinance is you represent the people of Glenwood Springs. They voted at that time to do exactly that. Okay, so if you go back to the original language, we're right there, except we'll have to subtract $1 because it's less than 2%. So 119,999, I guess. But my point is that was original intent. And we've strayed from that original intent. And if you want to just add one other comic thing to it, I know there are a lot of comedians out of work, so I'll try to keep it short. At one time, the board of directors subpoenaed, begged and pleaded to take over the museum. If you would have done that at that time, you'd be paying a lot more money than $120,000. I'll tell you that for sure. Okay, so that's my purpose here. You represent the people of Glenwood Springs. The people of Glenwood Springs like their history. The people who come and visit like their history. We cannot keep, I mean, look at the inflation rate right now. There's no way we can exist on 60,000. And I tried to show you the funds that we bring in are almost equal to the funds that we're asking you for. You know, and I hope you trust me enough. I've been doing this 6 years. I thought it'd take me 2 to bring this place where it is now, but it's taken 6. I've got a lot invested here. I can't keep going. I plan on retiring for good in a year to 2 years, but trying to find somebody that's from this area to take my place is going to be a very difficult thing. I'd hope to come up with a plan to how to do that, but the only person that I found that was willing to do that with a museum degree is working for Whole Foods and is not about to quit $65,000 with no benefits. Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So Bill, I just looked at the email and at the bottom, at the top it says 22, but the bottom it says 2013 proposed budget.
2023.
2000, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. I don't find it in my emails. I'm not saying you didn't do it. I can't
Well,
find it.
yeah, and I used you as the liaison because you were the one that asked me for it, and I thought, it would be distributed.
And I don't remember if I got it or not, and normally it would be part of the packet, it would be submitted, so, yeah, I apologize that, I just thought of that you had said the 22, I remember the 2023, so.
I just hate for the decision to be put off because we have an operations account, I just ran the P&L and the balance sheet. $55,386.18. We'll probably make 3,000 at the gingerbread thing after Thanksgiving. That 50,000 is the money you gave us for the coke ovens. It's not being spent for anything else. That leaves just a little bit of money to make it through the end of this year. Okay, so that's why we are in a dire strait here. And it's not because you look at those grants we've been getting aggressively. Getting those grants, they don't pay for salary, most of the instances don't. So,
I have a question.
any other questions?
So this is the 2023 budget, right? You're asking for the increase for 2023.
Correct.
You just inferred that you might not make it to the end of the year, but you can
Well,
wait till.
We can make it to the end of the year, but that's going to be it. I'm just telling you that how much money.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, Steve, I was gonna pull up my budget, but do we have the 60,000 in the A and I?
Yeah,
for
that's correct. The budget that
2023?
you guys passed 2 weeks ago has $60,000 in the A and I
Okay.
fund to the Frontier Historical Museum, right?
Okay, are we taking public comment on this or
Sure.
are we ready for discussion?
No, I think
or-
we should at least kick it to the public.
Okay.
I have
Okay.
One more question of
Yeah.
Steve then.
Thank you, Bill.
And then
And
different-
then-
I have one
and
more
then-
question for Steve too.
Okay.
Steve, if we were able to provide some extra funding, where would we take that from?
We'd probably take it from the A and I fund.
Okay, thank you.
Because this also has, I wouldn't say it's an absolute impact from tourism, but I know we do have that bit of discretionary fund. What's the balance of that?
We've got about $225,000 that we're taking into 2023, and then we'll add about $125,000 or so in 2023.
So that too, we could potentially pull some of it from that as well. And we're talking
Are we
about,
into discussion yet, or-
I'd love to take public comment
Okay,
first.
let's take public comment.
Are there other questions? What other members of the public like to comment on this? See none. Shelley.
Okay, yeah, and Counselor Russo, not to cut you off, Ingrid, but I think it's important to understand, we do have the 60,000 in the budget. And I completely appreciate that you guys need more to run this. And I think it's totally appropriate to take it out of A and I because it is in the ordinance it was in the ballot question in the ordinance for the funding to come from A and I. It's still in there. And so, and it sounds like based on the ordinance, councils have traditionally just funded the Historical Society at that minimum. It says at a minimum, pay for the executive director. That's where we've been at minimum for as long as I can remember. And I think if we actually want to value our history and value the museum and keep it running, I do not have a problem bumping that up to somewhere close to the requested amount. What I need to see is a budget. I mean, when we work on this council and we approve and work with our finance department on approving the budget, we see detailed budgets. So I think my recommendation for now would be we we go with what's in the budget to start with, the 60,000, and we either set up a work session or have you all come back to council, have us have a detailed budget in our packet so that we can have a discussion and we see what we're talking about. That would be my only request. I'm not saying I'm not supportive. I just want to see the information. Thanks.
Counselor.
Oh, can I just say, I was able to find the 2023 budget and I just emailed it out to everybody. So I know you don't really have a lot of time to look at it, but you do have it in your email now.
Counselor Hershey.
I agree with what Shelley's saying. I would like to see everything as well. I also think that, Steve, this is more appropriate for the Financial Advisory Board. So I would make a motion to return this matter to the Financial Advisory Board for them to examine these matters. Mr. Mayor, I'm a history major. I love history. I'm a big history buff and the director knows that, but I don't like these out of sequence things when we don't have all the information and we have a board for this purpose. So that is my motion.
I would actually second that.
They're the experts, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Motion by Counselor Hershey, second by Counselor Dame. I see Ingrid reaching.
You
There.
know, my inclination is to obviously support this because of the, the importance of history and all of these variables, but I also agree that I don't want everybody to be making a decision that isn't well-founded and understand the budget in front of us. So while I really do want to proceed and have you guys have a decision tonight, I think the most appropriate thing is to, and I'm not so inclined to continue it or to put it back to FAB. I think we could make that decision. But I don't feel like it's this evening. Sorry, guys.
Paul.
In regards to Tony's motion, is FAB meeting in December or are they not meeting till January or February? I know it's been a little loose lately, so.
No, FAB is meeting the first week in December
Okay.
on Wednesday morning, which I think is the 6th or 7th.
Right, you moved that. Okay, thank you.
Shelley.
Can I just ask a point of clarification on the motion? Are you implying that it goes to FAB for looking for a grant or it goes to FAB on recommendation to increase the amount coming out of A&I?
The second thing.
Okay, great. Thanks. Then I can support
Is
that.
that what yeah, the
Okay.
second thing. You confused me.
But in the meantime, you do have the 60,000 to get started with for the year.
Yes.
Point of clarification. Okay, so that motion did include that, Counselor Hershey?
Yes, to
Okay.
clarify, can that be clarified for the record, Mr. City Attorney, sir? Yeah.
Okay.
And I also know, the federal government just.
Can
did a
you
grant too.
can you have to restate your motion just so we know what we're voting?
I would ask Mr. City Attorney that.
Would you like me to
This-
restate for you?
Well, did it be returned to FAB, but for what Shelley said?
Right,
that
so
they
I
can
think
examine the-
if I understand, let me see if I can restate the motion. The motion was to refer the matter to the Financial Advisory Board for consideration as to whether or not the amount in the 2023 budget should be increased from 60,000 to 120,000
Right. But
I
from A&I.
I would maybe ask a friendly amendment. If we're going to ask our experts in the FAB to make a recommendation, I mean, and this is one of the things that, getting budgets and not knowing some of the things and trying to make decisions on the fly, they'll be able to actually look into this. They'll be prepared. They'll have it in advance. If they come up with, they're looking at other things. I mean, we're like, oh yeah, $100,000 makes sense to me, makes sense to a lot of us, or 80 or something. They know if they take $100,000 out of A&I, what streets projects don't get done, what youth programs don't get funded, and they need to weigh that. So I don't think it should be the way the motion is currently, it's either funded at 160 or not. It's a black and white. So I think if we restate the motion to say, give us advice on and ask for increased funding, I think it'd be helpful because we don't know
is
those.
that okay with the second?
Absolutely.
So I would rephrase the motion, Mr. Hanlon, to include that as well.
So I believe the motion is restated would be to refer the matter to the Financial Advisory Board for consideration whether or not the funding request should be increased in the 2023 budget from $60,000 to $120,000, giving consideration to the other projects that are in the A&I fund and what impacts they would have on those.
No, just
What,
advice.
then why don't you make them?
I will. My friendly amendment would be to refer to the Financial Advisory Board for consideration of an increase amount from the A&I to the Historical Preservation Committee, period.
Without the dollar limit.
without the dollar amount, just,
You could have, never mind.
you said you had it. So is that okay with the first and seconder in that language?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments?
please no.
Okay, I'll learn that. Ryan, let's call the question.
Motion passes 7-0.
I'm just a little confused. Do I need to be at this FAB meeting? I would suspect I
be there.
would.
I would-
And December 6th or 7th, is that correct?
It's on Wednesday, whatever that Wednesday is, I think the 7th.
First Wednesday?
Yeah.
First Wednesday in December at 7:30.
7:30?
Yeah.
AM or PM?
AM.
I'll be here.
All right.
Great question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
By the way, Mayor, you said 160,000 again, you only asking for. And we spoke about Bill.
I think everybody said 160, so,
Well, I'll take it, but-
okay,
120
sorry. Thank you for that point of clarification.
or 160.
So do we need to restate the motion?
Can I amend it again? To make it, what's the difference between 120 and 160? I know.
Sign standards, item number 13, 2022, 28.
Can you hold up the sign?
I think it's Hannah.
Where's Jen?
Sign standard.
Where's Jared?
Like somebody. Looking at me now.
Oh, sorry, bag fees. Sorry, bag fees.
So that's what.
I see it. Thank you.
All right, Steve's gonna handle bag fees.
Well, I told you she's gonna quit.
Okay, you missed me teasing Steve about handling bag fees. A couple of recent statutory changes, fees for delivery services, that I think every municipality in the state has been ignoring. And fees for, and bag fees go into effect, on January 1, 2023, 10-cent bag fee, and also a ban on plastic bags. One of the things we needed to do was to make sure that we are exempting those fees from sales tax, because otherwise it would be a taxable event, which is what this ordinance does. The other thing this ordinance does is addresses what I think is a scrivener's error in their drafting of the statute, which is that the bag fee goes into effect January 1, 2023, and vendors are required to begin collecting it. But the first date of remittance of that fee under the statute is April of 2024. Obviously, that creates a huge hassle for our vendors. So what we have been doing as home rule municipalities, since we feel like we can, is simply enacting our own schedule for remittance. And what we've done here is just have them remit at the same schedule they do sales tax. That way they only have to do things once. And just for the public's benefit, that bag fee, 60% goes to the local jurisdiction, 40% is retained by the vendor to help offset the costs of moving from plastic to paper and other things. So anyway, that's all you have in front of you.
Any questions? See. Yeah, of course.
I'm just
of course.
curious, Carl. This is something we have to do, right? That's dictated by the state.
Yes.
We need to open it to public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment?
Cass?
And we have other people in the room. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to move that we approve ordinance 22-28 code amendment to title, no, not at all. Ordinance 2022-27, amending title 040, the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code to establish an exemption for the city sales tax and certain retail delivery fees and carry out bag fees enacted by the state of Colorado. And to clarify remittance of the bag fee.
I'll second that.
Just to clarify, Mr. Hanlon, this is something we have to do.
Yes, it is. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Moved by Counselor Dame, seconded by Counselor Wusso.
Since we have to do it, and
Ryan, let's call the question.
It's waiting.
7 people have to vote yes.
We don't have to.
Emery, Sign stand.
7 people vote yes, it passes
Sorry, I
7-0.
Both Mark and I did jump the gun.
What's that song?
Is the
in
case
there
just
about
scratched
signs From the sixties, you would remember. You know what I'm talking about, right? Don't come, you have to, no shirt, signs, everywhere, sign, yeah. Yeah. Anyway. While he's setting up. I'm too old, Carl.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around.
Oh, from 2023. The bag ban is coming in 2023, right?
Just
The fee.
while we're setting up, so there is a 6-month transition period to use up current stock. And so I believe it's June 1 or 5 months, whatever that is. I think it's June 1 that they have to have completely transitioned away from plastic, but you can use up whatever you have kind of on hand or.
There's other ways. Okay, you throw it away
Right.
or sell it to another state.
Okay, so Emory Ellingson, Community Development, presenting on planning file 2322, code text amendments. So this is for consideration of code revisions to sign code, and then also a minor change to use specific standards concerning accessory tourist rentals. So the action item, again, consideration of code amendment. Staff recommends approval with findings and conditions on page 9 and 10 of the staff report. City council actions are approve the code amendment, deny the code amendment, remand the amendments back to either director or planning commission for further consideration, or continue the item. And so again, these are the criteria that you're looking at for considering a code amendment change. So sign code, just kind of a quick overview. Sign code regulations, you can regulate signage by all the sorts of aspects given on that list. You can't regulate it by things like content or purpose or applicant. I don't know what's going on. It's not picking up the microphone. Okay. It just said check your audio, but it says live.
She says it's okay.
It's good. All right. So anyway, just overview, can't regulate signs by content, purpose, applicant. And generally, if you have to read it, it shouldn't be an aspect that's regulated. And so we have different types, freestanding and attached. This code amendment deals with freestanding signs. So your monument signs and pole signs. So the gas station and kind of covers are what we're talking about. And then again, these are just some other types that we have in code.
Supposed to be sharing with us. I see.
I see you. That's creepy. We're watching you, Emery.
It was, but then the audio came up. So anyway, all the lovely pictures. But again, y'all know what a monument sign is, what a pole sign looks like. We have a lot of them. And then another way that we regulate signs in Glenwood is by sign district, which functions a lot like a zoning district, and then also use. How is that property used? And so that's just sort of the general categories that the regulation falls into. And so these specifically, these sign code amendments address 2 types of signs. So monument signs and pole signs. The first change is to allow monument type signage for some residential uses, specifically for like a multifamily residential development. And then the second part is to amend code to prohibit pole signs for residential uses. And so again, so your monument sign for residential applications, that's kind of what we were talking about. As you have the subdivision, there might be a sign at the entrance. And current code, so current code is at the top, proposed changes at the bottom. So current code only allows a monument sign for residential use in a commercial zoning district, and that's pretty limiting. So suggesting the change to include residential uses with the exclusion of single family detached duplexes and ADUs. So those wouldn't be allowed. And then Planning and Zoning Commission also proposed some additional changes to those sizes, because again, if it's going to be used for residential uses, they saw that maybe shrinking the size would be a little bit more compatible with the neighborhood. And they also did propose a change just in general from 8 feet in height to 6 feet. And so those are all the changes proposed for monument signs. So again, this is the use table. Residential uses, all of these would be allowed. Monument signs with the exception of single family duplexes and ADUs. And then we have pole signs. So pole signs for residential use. Right now, pole signs are allowed by sign district. So kind of a quick summary is if you live on Cypress Drive, you could have a 20-foot pole sign in your front yard.
You said pole, not pulse, right?
Pole, yeah. You can't have the electronic signs. So
But you could have a pulse.
pole sign, yep. So that's just what this amendment is intended to address. So if you can see, so current code does it by sign district. This changes it to use. So the only uses would be mixed use and non-residential applications. So just kind of taking care of that gap in sign code. And so those are the sign code amendments. So again, it would prohibit all of the residential uses from using pole signs. So that would include mobile home parks, nursing homes, and personal care boarding homes, the way this is written. And then also just another note, flag poles is a completely separate thing in sign code. So those are separate. This amendment does not address that. And then the other change, which is a minor change to use specific standards for accessory tourist rentals. So previously city code, and I'm talking like back to 2015, we did have a definition for a family. And that was removed in all other sections of code except for this minor one. It's been replaced by occupancy limits are set by the International Property Maintenance Code. So rather than having the city be in the business of defining who lives in the house and if that constitutes a family, it just looks at square footages of a home, of a structure to determine how many people can live there. So again, you can see above is current code and below is what it would be amended to. And this is for accessory tourist rentals. And so actually for the separate section that governs short-term rentals, it matches what's on the bottom. So for whatever reason in accessory tourist rentals, this was left in. So it's been removed from everywhere else in the code. So again, kind of just a minor item. And that's just for reference. So like International Property Maintenance Code, all by numbers, square footages, it looks at the building rather than the inhabitants. Reviewing agencies, no comments received, no public comment was received. And so again, those are your options. Any questions?
Any questions? We have to, yeah.
I have a question. So like if someone had a short-term rental and they wanted to put a monument sign out front of it that, you know, like Baker House or something like that, is that allowed? In the-
Currently, no. And it wouldn't be with the changes either.
It would not be.
Correct.
Okay, great. That's what I somehow was trying to glean from this and I couldn't. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, see none, we'll open up for public comment. See none, we'll close public comment, bring it back for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Sorry.
Go, Paula.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-28 code amendment to title 070 development code as it pertains to sign standards and use specific standards.
You adopted the findings of the
Based on the findings,
staff report pages 9 and 10.
on staff report pages 9 and 10.
See,
Thank
that's
you.
what you get for jumping out there.
I'm sorry. Usually I have the whole thing in front of me.
It's been moved by Counselor Stepp, seconded by Counselor Dame. Any further comments?
Quick comment. I just wanted to thank Mr. Mayor, Planning and Zoning, and of course, staff for their hard work on this. And
Yeah.
I know signs can be more controversial than you think. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Ryan, let's call the question.
It passes 7-0.
Okay,
You were city attorney.
let's see. Council comments.
So you can have those flashing signs.
You cannot have the flashing signs, actually.
But like it freed it. They don't have
Nope.
to-
No.
They can't. They use,
flash,
it couldn't, they installed it. It can flash, but
But it can't.
it cannot by law. It can by technology.
Thank you. Because when he said pulse, I thought he said pulse. and I was thinking of pulsing.
Yeah, like Vegas.
Like Las Vegas or New York City.
All right, council comments. Go ahead. Paula, then Ingrid?
I have two. I was in a airport board meeting this morning and there has been discussion on its budget and there's some other topics that they feel unresolved. And I had talked to Steve, I believe, before we passed the budget and felt that we should have a joint work session in the next month or two. And I know we have a lot coming up, but if we could schedule that within the next month or two to talk about airport issues, that'd be great.
Yeah, I was following up on what Paula said. I actually had a conversation with the mayor that I was hoping we could fit in maybe half an hour on December 15th. They would like to, like you said, find some resolution on what their budget's going to look like. Couple of other ideas kicking around about how to address airport long-term budgetary needs. So we'd like to have that conversation with you guys, at least get it started.
So I'm bringing it to the council, but if we could consider that when you're looking at Mayor Pro Tem. looking
So
at
I would
agenda.
say yes, respectfully, yes for the 15th. But maybe let's not have a joint work session because I think there's things that we probably need to discuss about what we would like. And then maybe the following meeting, having a joint work session with them.
As long as they have an opportunity
Oh,
to
absolutely.
discuss with us, because
Yeah.
that is important to them. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other one that I wanted to bring up, just because I'm on the River Commission, and I want to make sure that the council is aware of it, that there's been a lot of public comment coming to the River Commission, to myself, to CPW and other entities, that there was an island in front of the Iron Mountain Hot Springs, and that is almost completely removed at this point. And the River Commission's concern was making sure that best management practices were in place, and also consideration of revegetation and what will happen next. And I'm not sure how much the rest of the council is aware of this going on over there, but there is some concern in the river community and different nonprofit NGOs involved in the river community. So I just wanted to bring it to the council's attention, and then also request that maybe we look at or request that staff ask that we ask for a conversation with the Iron Mountain Hot Springs folks, just to get everybody into a communication mode of what's happening out there. So, and maybe you can address that somewhat. Carl, you and I talked about it
Yeah,
a bit.
sure,
but-
absolutely. So Iron Mountain Hot Springs is operating underneath a Corps of Engineers 404 permit that was issued, I don't know, about a year ago. So those operations, there was an issue with it expiring. They did get it renewed to continue operations in the river. It is, the operations in the river itself are outside of our regulatory authority. That's the purview of Bureau of Rec. With the 404 permit, we did issue a grading permit for things that are happening above the high water line, which is within our jurisdictional limits. I have been or did reach out to Steve Beckley, and I will follow up on that regarding just kind of operations out there. I don't want anybody to, and this is a part of the conversation that Councilor Stepp and I had, I don't want anybody to get it in their head that they have authority out there in the water. And so I want to be careful about that because, you know, I don't want to get crossways over an issue where we just don't have that authority. And I also don't want to lead the River Commission to believe that they have some level of authority as an advisory body to you guys on a regulatory front. But certainly happy to continue to, and Terry has had a lot of conversations with the operator out there as well. But just kind of recognizing the limit of what we can and can't do.
And just for clarity, they just want communication. They feel that the time of the year, it's outside of CPW times to be working in the river like that, not being aware of kind of what was going on. And just making sure that there's an open line of communication. If there's potentially things that could be done just to kind of mitigate what that impact might be of the island being gone, not from a regulatory standpoint at all, just open line of communication. So,
So what are you asking?
so I'm asking for direction just to open that line of communication with further than So the River Commission has an opportunity to speak with Steve Beckley or Iron Mountain Hot Springs
I
or
mean,
something.
I
along
think
that
that
line.
they'd previously been, and there were some emails that chains that you were on that Steve had agreed to come to the January River
Right.
Commission meeting. Again, I wanted to be super clear here. They have no regulatory authority. We have no regulatory authority. I just want to be really careful on where this is going because it can go sideways really fast. And so I want to be super clear about that.
So I'm hearing caution from Carl.
I guess what I'm saying
And I
is that to the
understand
extent,
that.
to the extent that, I guess what I'm saying is, to the extent that Beckley's going to show up at the January River Commission meeting,
Yeah.
I think that piece of what you're requesting has been established. and
Right.
He's going to do that. The implication of the rest of it, I think, is really, can we force them to use best management practices? Do we have some regulatory authority? And that's why I keep saying like preemption is preemption, and I don't want to drift and give anybody the impression we can go there.
So Carla, geez, Paula.
That's okay, Paula. Yeah.
Where did Carla come from?
Just merging.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I'm asking, and I wasn't sure at some point in time in all the communication I'd seen, we weren't sure that Steve was still
Yeah, no,
going
I
to have a
just- yeah,
conversation.
Hannah just confirmed with me that
Okay, and so we're just looking for a conversation at this
So I
point.
think,
And I wanted the rest of council to be aware of what was happening.
I think this is why we have a great river commission, because we have representatives from Colorado River District, Colorado River Watershed, as liaison.
Roaring
by
Fork
habit.
Conservancy.
Roaring Fork Conservancy. So we
Yeah.
have a lot of the people who, it may not be like legally their authority, but it is definitely their interest, their advocacy as part of the River Commission. So I think that's great if we can, we're kind of convening all of these groups by happenstance because it happens to be the River Commission already. So I think, if they ask something of us, the River Commission or the Conservancy or somebody or CPW to potentially weigh in, if they ask that of us, I think we need to consider it just for sure.
And again, we're trying to keep it on an even, this is just a conversation, is what we're looking at here in reference to what you're saying, Carl.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Yes, I have 3 things this evening. The first is that on November 30th, Marco and I are going to be at the Glenwood Springs Golf Course at 5:30 in the evening. And the 2 of us are going to be hanging out and having a chat with the community. So Brianna's going to help us get it out there and make sure people know about it. But so this is the beginning of knowing about it. And, and hopefully more opportunities for the community to connect with us, ask us questions and just be in touch. So it'll be a great listening session for us. We'll have our listening ears on. The second thing is, I know we have some money in the budget to do continuing ed. And I'm wondering if we can look at, and maybe Carl can help us with this, help us find maybe a workshop on Robert's Rules of Order. Because I think that I would like to, even if it was an online course on Robert's Rules of Order, I would like to take it. I think it would be helpful. Yeah, great. So putting it out there that maybe some school that's been, vetted by Carl and you guys to do that, that would be great. He can catch you up.
Okay, sorry.
And the third thing is at our next meeting, I am going to ask you all, I'm going to make a motion during my council comments to rejoin AGNC. So this is your notice that if you need to research the organization, do it in the next 2 weeks, because I believe that as a government of Northwestern Colorado, we should be at the table. And I want to be that representative. And I'm going to ask you guys where you're at with funding that for another year. Okay.
Charlie?
Ingrid, if you wanted to, that would you send us information on that rather than just say you're gonna bring it up if you have,
AGNC?
yeah,
Yeah, sure.
just if you're gonna put it, just send information I want us to consider. Thank you.
Anybody else? Charlie?
I have just one quick thank you, shout out to Ryan for, I don't know, the rest. No, I think he sent out an email, but Ryan has kind of put together all of an archive for all of our old ordinances and things that have been put publicly on the city website. So you can go in and you can search on them and find them. And I've already found it helpful. Sometimes it's helpful to go back and just find what some of the old things that were enacted with. It kind of gives us a bearing on some of the work that we're doing now. So anyway, that's there, and thank you for getting it done. I really appreciate it. And the other thing I had was a request and maybe a reminder from council. We're starting our climate action plan process. And I don't know if we have a representative from council on that, is if there's a steering committee. But if we're having that, I would love to be involved with that if I can.
So we, I believe at the last work session, kicked it back to 2 members of the public to advise us if we should or should not do an RFP. I think that RFP will inform the public process potentially, but if we don't hear from those 2 members of the public, then we probably need to take it back up
Right.
to see if we want to do the RFP. And then I think, Hannah, that's kind of the process as you understand it.
Have the city take that on.
So maybe
Okay.
if you could reach back out to Heather and just see if they have a recommendation that we could act on, because I think we'd like to be going on it.
Actively corresponding with us.
Okay.
Working quite hard. to be
Cool.
Excellent.
Great. They're
for
very
community
enthused.
members, so they're getting kind of a survey together, and that's moving along nicely, so that I think the end result of that is
Survey of,
come back to you. It's a good question.
oh,
This is a project that I've just taken on, so.
Okay.
so just to be clear, before we have a couple citizens that put a survey that want to do a community survey, and then we find out that we have $20,000 community survey, like we need to,
Nothing of that nature.
okay.
Right.
I will certainly update you with a more thorough analysis of what has come in from Heather McGregor and thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Okay.
All
Thank you.
right. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to note for the record that Mr. Hershey left the meeting. Really, I think the minutes should reflect that.
Thanks. Is there anything else? I did have a request. I don't know if this corresponds in coming out, but I had a request from Francine Jacober, she's a Picken County Commissioner, that we write a ordinance of support, letter of support? Resolution, thank you, one of those. Of support for wild and scenic protection on the Crystal River. Which you might be asking yourself, what is the Crystal River in Picken County and, Eagle or Carbondale Valley have to do with us? I mean, it is part of our eventual watershed. We do take water. We do mix water out of the Roaring Fork at times. So that will be on our next agenda as well. And Carl, I just sent that to you today. I don't think you had any, probably didn't have time to look at it, but. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I
I
sent
think
you
I
an
said it.
email reminding you.
got a copy, but I didn't bring it. I thought it was, John's gonna raise it, he's just gonna, you get
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah.
So if you could
I-
just resend it, thank you.
Actually, I'll have you look over it, and if you would mind sending it to us.
Yeah, let me just, I am not finding where you oh, there it is.
I did.
Okay, I got it.
Anything else? City Manager?
See,
Yeah, I just had a couple of things. In the next meeting, we'll bring forth our last budget amendment for the year. It won't affect the 2023 budget, but it will change the 2022 revised budget to make it more accurate. Mostly it'll be taking projects out and reducing those numbers that we didn't get to this year. And then as soon as we do that, we can print the budget and go final with that. A couple of personnel updates. Jen was our community development director and Hannah was the assistant director. We've asked Hannah and she has accepted the role of acting community development director. So thank you, Hannah. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Hannah.
We were able to hire a systems IT analyst that we were out for. We hired an HR administrator a couple of weeks ago named Jake, who's doing a terrific job. We made an offer that was accepted for our deputy clerk and court administrator, and we have 2 good candidates, very good candidates for our transportation manager job. So we are making some real progress in terms of getting staffed up, and we're getting closer and closer all the time. Yvette and I have been out in the last week or two with that new HR administrator doing open enrollment. So we go out and we talk to all the different departments out there and kind of get them situated. And as we were talking about it a little bit, it was kind of surprising really, but I think morale within these different departments is higher than certainly than any time that I've been here. And one of the I think there's a number of things that go into it, but one of the things that came up a number of times is the support they feel from this council, and particularly the implementation of the salary study and a 5% bump in March or April last year and 5% bump going into 2023. That is not going unnoticed by our staff, and it's made it easier for us to recruit. So thank you guys for that. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that our staff really appreciates that and feels very supported by City Hall right now.
Thank you.
Cool.
We appreciate them also.
Quick clarification from acting director. Just so you don't think that we're ordering the crazy survey. Heather, I pulled up the email and it's a 9-question survey to other communities to see what they're doing with their
Great.
climate action plan. Sigh of relief. Thank you.
Because we value our staff, I don't want to see
Yeah.
this go down a huge rabbit hole. So I'm glad. Carl.
Sure. 2 or 3 things. You guys saw, I can't remember if it was before or after the last council meeting that the brief got filed, the amicus brief. That was well received in the end. I think there were 10 other communities that signed on with Glenwood. And I think that was really reflective of, it was the right thing to do. I appreciate you guys' leadership on that. And I think it went a long way with a lot of communities around you, feeling like you were, you had the capacity to help take something on that was important to them that they just couldn't get to. So from that standpoint, I think that's fantastic. Don't let me forget to hand out notebooks afterwards. We talked about the airport. At some point, we're going to need to come back probably and have a real discussion around tree policies in town. And I think that just to get your head wrapped around it, that's probably coming back in January-ish. That's going to be an issue that we're facing with, you remember the presentation on the canopy. We're going to have a continued kind of, how do we address that? How do we address our nuisance ordinance in town where essentially if the tree is adjacent on public property, it's your responsibility. So we need to start talking through some of those things. So that's kind of a preview of what's coming up. And I can't think of what else to say for 11 minutes.
Carl, because it's not part of our public meeting, you want to give us an update on the city manager search so that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. So city manager search, it closed on the 14th. I'll be handing out notebooks here in a minute with all those applicants. We had, I think it was 32 applicants in total. High number of those, probably 70% were met minimum qualifications, and most of those had preferred qualifications that you guys were looking for. It represents, I think, a nice diverse group with an interesting set of backgrounds. So I think I'm very hopeful that it's going to be a good round for you guys to find the next city manager. You agreed that we'd meet at 7:30 in executive session to discuss and try to select semifinalists on the 22nd with an eye towards trying to complete and get a finalist list by December 1st. So I appreciate that. It's going to move kind of quickly. And I think that's everything on the manager search.
I would like to move to adjourn.
Can I tell you guys really quickly that Steve took me up to the new water vault? Where you can see
Oh, the new pipe?
the new pipe
Ah.
where it's gonna have both water sources be able to mix at the same time instead of always historically being able to use one. And if you guys get a chance, you should either go for a hike or somehow get it up there so you can check it out. It's pretty cool. It's definitely a next step for us for just efficiency, and they like to throw out the word redundancy. So
Motion to adjourn by Marco. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Good night.